Greetings all, Christian Barker here, and welcome to the latest episode of Banter with Barker. It's 10 p.m. on a Thursday night here in sunny, sultry Singapore, and today I'm connecting with a gentleman based in equally sunny California, though he'll be enjoying the pleasures of early morning hours, magic hour, about 7 a.m. there, I believe, and I am chatting to Miles Fisher, who is a true multi-hyphenate, an actor, entrepreneur with a very interesting coffee business. He's a musician who has released some very creative, not only music but music videos, and basically yes, very much a modern day Renaissance man. Just waiting for him to join us, and then we will get started. There's Miles. Let's do this thing. Just hit that request to join here we go. All right. Welcome aboard, Miles Fisher. How are you?
Dr. Barker, I'm great, man. How's everything on Lee Kuan Yew's island?
It's pretty good, you know. The plans he put in place all the way back in 1965, they're still seem to be working. So yeah, everything is functioning as per usual. But look, it's I really appreciate you making the time to chat today, and it's just it's good after, you know, we've been kind of communicating. I think in written correspondence
since 1965, since those rules were put in place.
Neither of us is quite that old, though I'm a little longer in the tooth than you are, and a little bit more professorial, Dr. Barker.
You certainly look awfully smart. You know, this is 7 a.m. my time. I think it's late in the evening.
But it is very late in the evening. I was tempted to do one of my my sort of trademark dressing gown fits for you this evening, but instead I've worn my my usual blue blazer for the Banter with Barker session. Though, as I have often revealed, there's generally Bermuda shorts on the bottom half. I do it Ron Burgundy style, where it's you know, it's business up top and party down below with the patch madras Brooks Brothers shorts on the bottom
critical.
half. So.
All I care about is proper Bermuda socks. Shorts, okay. Trousers, whatever you want. But if you're really going the right, covering those handsome calves.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's frowned upon here in Singapore. We're more of a sort of flip-flop nation, which those and socks, that's a step too far. I know David Beckham has pulled off that look a few times, but yeah, you can't always bend it like Beckham. So there we go. But look. Yeah, let's enough talking about hosiery, hosiery before brosery. Let's talk about what you are doing with Blamo and this new podcast, which was the one thing that in the intro there I didn't really mention. We'll of course come back to your work as a thespian and your campaigning for Tom Cruise 2020, which we'll see how that goes. Certainly be better off with him than with Kanye, I think. But yeah, so you've just launched a new podcast, which is called Coffee with the Greats, and that you're doing on the Blamo channel, which has done a great deal of, you know, very interesting podcasts with individuals from the whole hashtag menswear community, and now moving into slightly more august individuals that you're sort of bringing aboard, and doing these interviews in conjunction with your father, who is also quite an awesome individual in his own right. So how did this all come about?
So, and thanks for mentioning all that. I had this podcast has been great. I'll just start by backing up and saying I've been a podcast junkie. I've been a consumer now for so long that I find it to be, I honestly find it to be the most kind of substantive media these days, as though it had kind of the highest nutrition content.
Right.
And by that, there's so much noise, and the internet and the device that you and I are talking on and all these social networks, they're extraordinarily powerful and they're great. I love them, but they just cut out context.
Yeah.
Kind of the last 20 years, anybody in the public world has been so used to keep it pretty simple, get in your sound bite. They're only going to take 40 seconds from this, and then they're going to move on to commercial. And it just lacks a lot of sincerity. And so my father, so I am, that's my daughter in the background. I have two young girls under 3 years old. I know you're also a family man, and it's wonderful, but not conducive to recording live interviews like this. But I'm 37 years old, and several years ago, my parents separated after 40 years of marriage, and life was just changing, and we had our first child, and I just wanted to do something. I tried to come up with just a father-son project and a mother-son project. No big agenda, just as a way to kind of have something creative together that would be kind of a new bonding experience. And for my father, my dad has had this kind of extraordinary career, and actually he was a colleague and actually quite friendly a while back with Lee Kuan Yew, and knew him and had some official visits to Singapore. But he's built these extraordinary relationships in the business world. He's served our federal government. He's been kind of high at the totem pole in worlds of finance. And it is totally different from me, Christian, who graduated from uni and took a good education, threw it out the window, and moved to Hollywood.
Come on.
I'll tell you what, in the world of acting, when you're sitting in the waiting room, talking to other actors, it's never oh man, you went to Harvard. It's more, buddy, you finished high school. Like, what's that like? It's just a different world, which I appreciate. And part of the reason I moved out here is because I totally wanted to do things on my own. But with my dad, I said, listen, we're now having children. You're a grandfather. You have some extraordinary distinguished friends. And as I have known them just personally, not professionally, a lot of these people at the dinner table are fascinating, but actually quite low key. And when you're not talking about anything topical or political or, current stock price issues, they're just everyday people, but there's a lot of wisdom because they've had these extraordinary journeys. And so the idea was, let's sit down for a multi-generational interview. Now, I look at the bylines you write for. You're as established as it gets, from traditional, FT and kind of financial broadsheets to even what we're doing right now on Instagram Live. All these guys are absolute seasoned pros. The head of JP Morgan, the head of AT&T, the head of MasterCard. These are all guests we've already published. And when I initially talked to them, I don't think in print or in television or anywhere, I'm not familiar with a kind of a father and a son interviewing someone together. And it just allows for this different format where the very first question I always ask anybody, it's really simple. It's just, where were you born and what did your parents do for a living? And immediately they start talking about their parents. Because of the certain generation, usually it's, well, my father worked for this and that, and my mother was, a homemaker. And then I'll say, well, tell me about your mom. And they'll just light up. And all the BS, all the nonsense is from the opening gate wiped away. Because when someone talks about their family, even if they didn't have a positive relationship, which is rare, it's with reverence. And then when they talk about their parents for a little bit, usually what I'll do is I'll say, now tell us a little bit about your children. I'll kind of skip them and go to the next generation. And it makes for a wonderful interview. And so we had done that. We had gotten kind of 6 or 7 of these interviews, which took a long time. I mean, as you know, all of these were done in person. And so the bottlenecks of scheduling and just sitting in the same room, and that was tough.
Getting in the same room with anyone at the moment is, particularly the last few months, has not been easy.
it hasn't been easy. But that brings up a good point, which is a lot of these interviews were recorded. All the ones that have aired so far were pre-COVID.
Okay.
And as we were going into lockdown, I was sitting on these wonderful interviews. And also, as we were going into lockdown, like everybody else in the world, it was just insane. You know, nobody knew what the world looked. Everything, time was warped. Every day felt like one long run-on sentence. It was just bizarre. And I thought, okay, we can put these out. And with the idea of if we get these out and if the format works, if people respond to these interviews as podcasts, then it would be easy to now that the world has gone to Zoom meetings and you can record these things remotely, let's get out what we have and then start all that. And so I have listened, you know, I've been following your work for a very long time now. I feel a little fluent in that world. Jeremy is kind of in the same universe as far as media. And I sent it to him and I said, take a listen, see if you think there's anything here. And it kind of started that way.
Wow. Yeah. Well, they're incredibly compelling. And you know, prior to discovering Coffee with the Greats, obviously, you know, I was familiar with you and you and I had been in touch since my sort of early days at the Rake magazine. And you're one of the few people in the world who has every single copy of it. You're going to take me over there now, aren't you? See, I don't even have every single copy. I've got every single copy that I edited, obviously, but yeah, nothing.
I don't have. There's like two that are, you know, Grail status that are hard to find. But yes, I have, and I have to say, I think what your time kind of shepherding the Rake is incredible education for a guy like me. Just the
education for me as well, you know, which was the amazing thing. No, I think I was a lot of that stuff I didn't know, and I.
How old were you roughly when you started?
Okay, so 2008, I was 33. Yeah. And
so you're 33 at the time. Were you living in Singapore?
Yes. Yeah. The magazine was founded here in Singapore, and yeah. So you know, there were a lot of pre-2008 photographs that I look back on, and yes, smack my head at some of my sartorial missteps. But and that despite the fact that, you know, my father was quite a clothing enthusiast, clothes horse himself, and had imparted, you know, a lot of his knowledge, and my mother. There I am. I'm bringing up the parents now.
Well, tell me a little bit about it. They were both your folks are Australian.
Yeah. And I believe your grandfather is Australian as well.
He is from Toowoomba.
Oh, Toowoomba, beautiful. Up there in Queensland.
That's right.
That's the accent from there.
I've been told for some reason I can do a good number of accents, but a lot of my mates from university were Aussie. But when I break into an Australian accent, they said, actually, you've got a pretty on point Kiwi accent.
Okay.
I don't know why. It's absolute happenstance. It just kind of pops in. It's quite outrageous. It may actually be too early in the morning for me, Christian. But I don't know. I mean, how's that sound? Is it pretty decent?
It's not the worst. It's not the worst I've heard. No, that's not bad. And yeah, it's definitely.
There's a trained journalist right there. It's not the worst.
It's yes, and I agree with your roomies. It's a little bit more cross Tasman, a little bit more Kiwi than Australian. But you know, that's why my countrymen do so well in Hollywood. Is that, you know, we can do American or English or, you know, South African or, you know, French, whatever it may be. But yeah, Americans struggle. It's a strong accent that you guys have, so it's tough to cast that off and do other other accents.
Yeah. I always had this idea of a character who was an American that moved to kind of a smaller Australian city to try to act in the community there, just try to get cast on, you know, Neighbours with a fake Australian accent, and it was kind of just the reverse. And his life in Australia, because you're absolutely right. I mean, the Aussies have absolutely taken over leading role, yeah, for 20 years now, and it's great. However, I have slowly backed out of the Hollywood world, and it has been a colorful ride, but it's a strange time.
Well, look, I cut you off on your question, so I will tell you. Yes, my parents Australian. You know, Dad was a consultant, did a lot of work for the sort of New South Wales state government, but you know, he loved his tailoring, loved a bit of Xenia. At the age of 16, took me in to see his tailor and said, you know, we need some grey flannel trousers for this boy. We need a double-breasted blue blazer. We need a pinstripe suit. You know, at that time, I was a very svelte individual, not a little bit skinnier than I am now. I believe they had to take a 36 regular suit jacket and trim that down even more. So I was probably sort of a 34 or something. But yeah, I guess that was kind of my initial introduction to that whole sort of world, and I still use that as a good example of you know, as a young guy starting on their sort of sartorial journey. What do you need? But a blue blazer, some grey flannel trousers, and you know, a business suit of some kind. It was a good grounding. But
that was my high school uniform.
Okay, yeah.
And I, similar to you, my father was actually quite svelte growing up, and just the quality of well-made clothes. When I was in high school, I wore his hand-me-downs from when he was at university, and then kind of early when he was a young professional, some of the first trips he did was to Hong Kong, and so and you know, back in the late 70s, you know, they would turn around a suit super quick and whatnot. Anyways, when I was in high school, I kind of up in the attic cedar closet, came across these old suits and whatnot. And so I wore those, and I just absolutely loved it. And being, you know, in high school, being 15 and 16 and having to wear a jacket and tie every day, you realize just the tremendous functionality of a well-made jacket. I mean, it's kind of like a man purse, really. You have interior pocket right, interior pocket left, outside pocket right, outside pocket left, heat regulation, take it on, take it off, secret pockets to throw in your knapsack, you know, on the thing and whatnot, dress up, dress down. And I just thought, this is, from a young age, I naturally was very comfortable wearing structured, tailored clothes. And then when I was at uni, you know, my job on the side, I made beer money working at one of the last great American haberdasheries, which is this place called the Andover Shop. And, you know, it was the kind of place just like your memory, which was a father or a grandfather would take their son in for their first proper piece of clothes, their first proper kit. And it would be the same tailor, and you pick out a bolt of fabric and, you know, size them up and maybe make it a little bit larger so you can grow into it. And I just loved it. And the relationship that one had with the tailor and everything, it's, of course, a bit of a different world. And so much of that craftsmanship, you know, slowly, I don't want to say deteriorates, but it's a muscle like anything else. And it can just kind of fatigue. But I will say, I don't know, Christian, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on the current landscape. One of the very last purchases I made prior to the shelter in place pandemic, whatever you want to call it, was a suit commissioned by Davide Taub of Gibbs. And he was in Los Angeles. He's an extraordinary tailor. And, you know, the process alone, of course, from London to LA, it takes about a year and a half just with 2 visits. Now, I don't know if I'm ever going to see this thing. And when I do, I don't know when I'm ever going to wear it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of us are getting the quarantine 15 as well, the extra 15 pounds, which is why it's kind of lucky that these podcasts are cut off at
you
this
look great,
point.
pal. You look, cut it out.
Oh, no, stop it. Flattery will get you everywhere. Look, going back to your dad, who you know, amazing, number one, just academic career. I think, you know, he was at the Naval Academy and then Harvard and then Oxford and then Stanford. You know, incredible, and then just an amazing career in banking, finance, and becoming the president of the U.S. Federal Reserve, which is like, whoa.
And his father was homeless.
Wow.
That's what's so incredible to me. My grandfather was, and this is no exaggeration. For a time, my father was in Bill Clinton's administration, his cabinet. He was the trade minister for the U.S. And so he was able to go to the Australian government and actually have them look up the records, because a lot of this was just family lore. My grandfather was abandoned on a doorstep in 1904 in Toowoomba, Australia. Escaped out of orphanages. It was really, really tough. I think he lost all of his natural teeth by the age of 14.
My goodness.
Grim times, and he made his way as a stowaway on a ship to South Africa, where he met my grandmother, whose entire family died in the flu epidemic. They were both orphans. And he kind of the 20th century American dream, came to this country very poor and made a life for himself, had 3 sons. And my dad and his brothers grew up very, very modest and humble. My father kind of grew up in Mexico. He was born in California. They quickly moved to Mexico. Spanish was his first language, and got a went to a tough military prep school that doesn't even exist anymore, and got a scholarship to the Naval Academy, and then transferred to Oxford. And I don't know if these things necessarily happen anymore. Long story short, I've kind of been a little bit in awe of my father's story, and my siblings and I have kind of thought, well, how on earth could anybody continue that trajectory? I mean, from homeless to Harvard, or you said the Federal Reserve. I mean, not to put too fine a point, but in one generation, from begging for money to literally printing it for the most powerful economy in the world. So I just think, okay, well, that's great. Let me go to Hollywood and act in movies. It's like, where do you go from there? And So it's kind of a little bit of when Jeremy Kirkland first heard these interviews, he pointed out something that I never considered, which is what I'm hearing in between these questions is a father-son story. And you're kind of trying to bond with your dad in a way with, the relationship. And I think he's kind of on about it. And then also, I don't know if your folks are still alive, I'm kind of entering the second act of my life where I just don't see my family as much as I'd like to. It's kind of a new chapter. So it's a nice way to continue. Are you much of a podcast listener?
I'm not actually, though. I had a radio program in Australia for on a small community station that sort of broadcasted over Bondi and Coogee beaches and those sort
nice.
of. It was an idyllic way to spend my sunsets on a Sunday, playing some smooth sounds for a Sunday afternoon. Christian Barker.
That sounds lovely.
Bondi 88 FM.
When I was a young guy, I used to always get my flat whites at Speedo's Cafe on the other end of Bondi Beach, and it was awfully good. Listen to a bit of public radio.
I'm sure, as long as you don't follow the dress code for the Speedo, the budgie smuggler, as we call it. No. But going back to your question, podcasts, no, but it's something, and I'm doing. I think you're the like 53rd or 54th one of these.
It's fabulous, yeah. These
little interviews that I've done during the this, whatever you want to call it, this lockdown or quarantine period. Though we're slightly emerging from it now. And yeah, I don't know where this is going to progress to, but I've been pondering the sort of podcast or doing it on video and making a podcast out of that as well as a YouTube thing, or I don't know. Where did we start here? Where did the thread of this conversation begin?
Well, I was telling you just a little bit about the podcast and the origin stories, and I think just guys like you and me, there will always be these detours of Sartorially. No, it's
My
great.
bad.
This is my favorite kind of interview too, because again, like this is how real humans talk.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like you and I would sit down at dinner and say, okay, where does the agenda begin and end? And I find kind of space to speak. Of course, you know, the difference between a podcast and this, other than visually,
Mm.
is, you know, you have an hour long conversation. Sometimes it goes an hour and a half, and then you can cut it up a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
And this, of course, is all live, but it's
Well,
nice. I'm happy to
I've had
talk
some
to you.
people say to me, I just can't do it, dude, because it's fully live. There's no chance for me to go back. I'm going to say
Sure.
something stupid. I'm going to say something I regret, and we're not going to be able to edit it out. And you know, it lives forever on the internet. So, and I can understand that. And you
Yeah.
know, there've been things where I've had to go back and go, oh, what did I just say then? Did that sound really politically incorrect or whatever? But I think I've gotten away with it now. But no, look, going back to what you were saying, it's kind of how I've always tried to conduct interviews with, you know, I prepare the hell out of them, and I get to know as much as I possibly can about the person I'm going to interview, and I probably read, you know, as many previous interviews with them as I can get my hands on, just to glean information, but also to know what not to ask, you know, so I'm not
Sure.
asking the same questions that everyone has asked in the past. But if you go in with a list of questions, you know, it's I've often said it's a bit like making love, but sort of plotting it out before you go in there and say, okay, first I'm going to place my hand here, and then next I'm going to kiss your earlobe, and you know, it's just that would
Wait a
not
minute. Wait a
be.
minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. That's not how you're supposed to do it.
Well, I don't know. Maybe you are now. I don't know. Maybe in the new culture, that's gaining consent for each of these things and ticking it off before you proceed to the act itself. Perhaps you should. But it strikes me as lacking a little bit of spontaneity, and
Well,
that
I've got
maybe
to.
things.
As you say that, I also it's the same thing with acting, with actually acting in a scene. You know, you prepare like crazy. And not only have you memorized the lines, you know, you really prepare for the emotion. What is the point of the scene? What is being conveyed? And then, you know, right before action is yelled, you throw it all out, and your job is just to be present. And if everything was premeditated, you're not actually listening, and it doesn't become a real conversation. Then it's all stilted. So I think there's a lot of similarities to just being present in an interview or being present in a scene, or even in real life. I mean, things are so crazy. I've got this coffee business that luckily has been very busy right now. And just the state of the world. I come home and I try to, you know, do my part as dad and partner to my wife, and half the time, you know, like with just the way the world is, you're exhausted, and if you're just not present, you know, you can feel it. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is just to be present right now, and also not to be nervous when, you know, there's a little lull or a little quiet. So
The lull and the quiet. Sometimes you need to leave that lull and leave the uncomfortable silence, and that's when you get someone to really reveal something. But look, I want to jump back to you were talking about your acting and technique there, and you know, it would be remiss of me not to ask. You know, one of your acting roles was in one of the absolute you know, seminal sort of cultural moments of the last sort of decade or two, and I refer, of course, to Final Destination 5. No, I'm talking about, of course,
seminal.
Mad Men, of course, which was, you know, hugely influential on, I think, a lot of guys like myself and like yourself. What was it like working on that? And you know, at the time that you worked on it, did you realize that the sort of the resonance and the ongoing influence that it was going to have? I think you were in maybe the third season or
third season, and
okay.
it was going to be a little bit. There were various episodes, and it kind of changed up a little bit. Kind of backing into the question, boy, I don't know. I never necessarily set out to just act, as it were. I had graduated uni in 2006 and moved out to LA just at the end of the year. So around 2007, Google had just bought this thing called YouTube. YouTube was a whole new phenomenon. And when I was at college, a classmate of mine freshman year was Mark Zuckerberg. So he left sophomore year, but
Wow.
Facebook was thefacebook.com. It was my dorm before it was our class, before it was,
Wow.
and so I was very fluent in whatever this new language was.
Yeah.
And so I move out to LA, and YouTube was brand new, and brands, established media, were basically taking 30-second television spots and just slapping it on the internet and saying, okay, well, that's what digital marketing is. And I was young enough to know, one, this is a whole new type of media. It is a social media. It is interactive. And two, was naive enough to think that, a young 20-year-old could start a digital ad agency and start signing clients and making dinky videos online, which is what I did. And so I started, music has always been a big part of my life. I've been singing kind of semi-professionally since I was 10 years old. And when I was in college, I toured all over the world performing kind of traditional jazz. And I mean, literally, we went on 25 country, 6-continent world tours. And so I could record music on my own. And early on, if you recall, the early days of digital video, one of the biggest genres was music videos.
Yeah.
And so I made these music videos, and I started selling, basically the sponsorship of music videos to brands like car makers and electronic, big Vizio and Range Rover and this sort of thing. But I was a young guy, and I was hustling, and so I was also acting in all these videos, and they did very well. And so I started getting cast in, small parts on shows and movies and whatnot. I thought, well, this is kind of cool, but that's a side hustle. And, I'm a marketing guy. I had no idea who I was. I still don't. And it wasn't until Mad Men that I was like, okay, this is cool. This is a thinking person's show. This is a sophisticated show. Obviously, it hit all the right notes aesthetically. And a couple of memories from that. One, I've never seen, so in television, the creator is called a showrunner, and it really is their baby, but there's different degrees of it. And Matt Weiner, who created Mad Men, is the most fastidious person I had ever seen on any set. I mean, he made me try on, not just like hold up a necktie to my outfit. He made me actually put on over 10 different ties when I was soft focus in the background of a scene that you didn't even see me. I just never seen it. And I thought, hey, pal, like if people are judging my tie in this scene, like we've already lost the battle. But he was just fastidious, and it shows up in the work. And I thought, this is really cool. And because I was an a cappella singer in college, he actually put that into the scene, which was very, very fun. I played some, Princeton drug dealing a cappella singer, which is a very fun character. Another just quick memory while it's on my head that I'll never forget is the first day. The way it works in television is you have, for each episode beforehand, usually if they can do it, the entire cast sits around a big table and everybody just reads it out loud. It's the only time the whole cast comes together. I never had any scenes with John Hamm in that episode, but he was at the table and I got to talk to him for a few minutes. And when I met him, he just said, hey, how's it going? And excuse me? And just that quiet. He was just like, hey, I'm really looking forward to this. And it kind of made you lean in a little bit. And it was just such a power move, a discreet power move to kind of lower the energy and bring someone into you. And I just thought, wow, I haven't seen that before. I grew up in a political family where it's all kind of speech making and boom-bast and presenting. And just the gravity of that really made an impression. I think you see it in a lot of John Hamm's work. But it was cool. So Mad Men was really cool. And around that time also, I got cast in a movie that few people saw, but was directed by Clint Eastwood. It was with Leonardo DiCaprio and actually with J. Edgar. And, it was the first time that my father and other people from the world I grew up in were really impressed because Clint Eastwood is a living legend. And I just thought, hey, maybe I really have a shot at this acting thing. Because it was
Yeah.
always kind of hedged a little bit. And so that Mad Men and J. Edgar and whatnot, that really caused me to pursue that for a while. And I'll kind of button up the story just by saying, you know, for the ensuing kind of 8 years that followed, I got cast in a lot of television shows, and all those television shows, they didn't get picked up. You know, you shoot a pilot,
Yeah.
and if the pilot doesn't go, it'll never see the light of day. If you make a movie, even if the movie doesn't turn out that great, it still gets its day in court. You know, it's still released publicly. And television show is not the case. And so, but if you get cast as the lead of a show, they basically buy out your schedule for 4 months, because if they do pick up the show, they won't allow you to run off to some other project. So it was very hard to on me, and it's a very difficult thing. Uh-oh. Can you hear me, Christian?
Luke, yeah, just lost the connection with you for a second there, but you just said you basically had 4 years of shackles, I guess.
Well, I wasn't able to showcase any of the work. I would shoot these shows, and they didn't go. And so that caused me to get back into making videos online and videos on YouTube, which is how I started, which is really what kind of creatively I love more than anything.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and obviously combining, you know, as you say, your original love of singing and doing that amazing American Psycho themed cover version of "This Must Be the Place" by Talking Heads, which was incredible and got you a lot of attention.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, and I was able to, again, with music, I was always envious of writers, because if you're a writer, you have something to show for you know, nobody can take that away. You put in the work, even if you're just putting out a page a day, if you're consistent about it, you know, after a while, you've got a script, or you've got a book, or you've got something. Here is what I've done. Acting, you know, it's not like at the end of a long day, I come home and unwind by doing a monologue. I'd cry myself to sleep. It's a very collaborative thing. You need someone to shoot, you need someone to play off of, etc. So it's a hard thing to do on your own. Music is more, tell you what. Am I coming through clearly?
Yeah, a little bit, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
You've switched connections.
Yeah, it's now just going off cellular, but it seems to be pretty clear. Is this good?
It's great. It's great.
Okay.
It's the joys of live broadcasting. Don't worry, you're much better than the people in New York who seem to be operating on 56K modems still over there. Please continue.
Well,
yeah.
so you know, with music, I could record music, and I could just do that and have that without depending on others. And so by using these music videos, there is a lot of fun. And I'm seeing some of the comments. What up, Voice F Grog? Still my favorite song. Some of these, I agree. I love these songs. I love making music, and I love just putting stuff out into the world. And my whole, you know, the algorithm has changed so much, Christian. Now it's about you have to constantly put out content, and I absolutely understand that. My whole way of thinking was, you know, my personal litmus test for a video to be viral. I didn't want everybody in the world to see it. What I wanted is for the people who watched it to watch it over and over and over again. Okay. And so for my videos, they were very high production quality. And I think there's enough detail that on the third viewing, you notice something that you didn't even notice on the second viewing. Sure. And it kind of, which is fun. I'm proud of the videos I've done. And this most recent one, the Tom Cruise thing, was great fun because, look, almost every day of my life, somebody says, "Hey, has anybody ever told you look like Tom Cruise?" And it's exciting for them. You know, for me, I get it all the time, and that's fine. And I'll just say, by the way, I love Tom Cruise. I don't know about you. I grew up watching Tom Cruise movies. I mean, Top Gun was the coolest thing in the world. Like Tom Cruise, also just the consummate professional real deal movie star. They don't make them like that anymore.
Yeah.
So just as a fan, I've always just thought the guy was cool. And I was so sick of people telling me I looked like this guy. And I was like, look, I'll just do an impression. And like I said, I kind of grew up in this political family. And so I thought, well, what if Tom Cruise ran for office? Like, how would he actually do it? And of course, what does Tom Cruise do better than anyone? He runs. He actually runs. And, you know, whenever I do an impression of someone, this is a personal trick of mine. What I try to do is I try to distill someone, whoever it is, down to kind of 2 words. Obviously, it's a heightened version of them, but what are kind of the 2-word ethos of this person? So for Tom Cruise, for me, it was intense pleading. You know, there's something about Tom Cruise where it is, you know, but help me, Christian, you know. So
help me help you.
Yeah, right. And it's very compelling. Yeah. And so I was like, well, how would not just joking around, how would Tom Cruise actually run for office? And like, I think he would probably do it by saying, look, I've been every man in the universe. I'm gonna make my case. I can relate to everybody while actually running in a desert.
From here to here.
Dude, it was so crazy. That ended up being the most physically challenging performance of my life. Yes. And actually really ruined my shoes. You'd appreciate this more than anybody. You know, the whole time I'm memorizing this and I'm running through the desert and whatnot. I was wearing lace-up Ferragamo shoes that I had bought in 2005. And ankle support, they did not provide. And I screwed up my shins so bad. For the 2 weeks after that, I couldn't even walk. But props to Ferragamo and the incredible shoes that they make, because it got me through the desert. But I'm glad you liked that video.
No, but look, and I wanted to say, if anyone who's watching now or who is watching this back in the recording, yes, just Google Tom Cruise 2020, and you will see Miles's amazing video. Where and as I mentioned to you on the message, I think it was yesterday, the thing that I found incredible about it is that it's almost one take. I think, you know, there's a bit at the start. Which you might cut some stuff together. But then it's you running at a serious pace, at a serious Tom Cruise.
There were no cuts. There's no cuts until the very, very end, which we did with a drone, where I leap over a bush and just kind of run off into the sunset. Yeah. From the very beginning, it's all one take. None of that is cut.
And that's why I said, you know, it's the new Goodfellas nightclub scene, which is that famous, you know, one shot dolly shot rolling into the nightclub and having
well, actually, there is a good Goodfellas crossover from that, because after that came out, Sharon Stone tweeted, if this guy's running for president, I want to be the Secretary of Treasury. And you know, she was in Goodfellas. I just thought that was the coolest thing.
Yeah, that was amazing, and I'm sure your number of plays on YouTube increased exponentially after the vote of confidence from Catherine Trammell. Very, very good. No, but someone has just commented, you know, no cuts, and I was out of breath while I was watching it, and it's true. I don't know, you know, how you managed to enunciate so well and keep in that cruise-like. It must have been your thetans were like, I don't know, possessing you. And I can't remember who it was. There was one of those talk show interviews with an actor who had worked with Tom Cruise. And of course, on talk shows, the question is always, it's a really cliched thing to say. What's it like to work with, you know, Tom Cruise? And this particular younger actor, I vividly recall, I think he was an English guy, so a little bit more irreverent. He always ready to take the piss, the English, and he kind of said, you know, I was feeling a little bit fatigued one day, and Tom Cruise said to me, "Be one, be one," and he was like, I don't know, what's he telling me to be? Is he telling me to, you know, inhabit the role? Is he telling me to you know, to be a Scientologist? Is he telling me to, you know, I don't know, to be what? And then Tom Cruise said, "Vitamin B1." And that was it. So yeah.
That is very good. One of the joys of having done this is I am now a repository for people's Tom Cruise stories. And
Okay.
I just kind of like what you did. I have heard so many people say, only once in my life was I in the same room with Tom Cruise, but here's what happened to me. Because, if that happens to anybody, you remember it. I mean, Tom
Yep.
Cruise is kind of this, and all the stories are just like that. However, look, I have no people's personal life is their personal life. I don't care. By all accounts, professionally, Tom Cruise it goes above and beyond.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
remembers just the consummate professional, which I find really impressive. I also the other thing I'll say, just in this shifting paradigm right now, is being mega, mega, mega famous. It's a pretty awful reality. I
Hmm.
mean, in the world of maybe being asked to handwrite signatures, it's just such a different thing from everybody, wanting their photo with. I have a couple friends who are proper A-list, and just as far as their children, obviously now going out in public, everything's changed with the pandemic, but
Hmm.
I wouldn't wish that on anybody. It's
Hmm.
it's nice to be able to have connections and get someone on the phone or get a dinner reservation. It's nice to have a little clout.
Yeah,
But
of
in this
course.
day and age, to really be mega wattage famous, oof, I would, I don't think anybody really would want that.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah. It's yeah. I'm sure it's got pluses
So
and
tone back, Christian, from being a global celebrity. I'm telling you,
okay.
it's not
Hey,
it's not worth
I'm
it.
just yeah, exactly. Let's fingers crossed that everything I am doing now is deeply unsuccessful. Touch wood, touch wood. Um, we're here to promote what you're doing now, so let's give that a little bit more
Well, let me.
coverage.
Okay, can I ask about that on the podcast? Because I'm curious.
Yeah.
I would like to know, kind of technically now, what you consider your beat, as it were. I mean, I know you cover a lot of things, but within your world, you know, we're uh, luckily able to talk to kind of people at the top of the food chain in their
Mm.
fields. And I'd honestly just be curious to know, in the world that you cover, who is someone, just as a consumer, that you'd be interested in listening to, kind of the coffee with the greats treatment? Like one guy for me, for example, who I would love to interview would be Johann Rupert, the head of Richemont,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So someone
Yeah.
like that to me would just be, and I'm a watch guy, and
Yeah.
I also love golf and what. I'd be fascinated to talk to him. Who is kind of someone like that that you just personally be like, oh boy, I'd be curious to hear what they have to say.
I, he's a polarizing character, but
Sure.
I I'm not saying Mr. Rupert is. Um, my person, who is another Mr. Rupert, maybe that's why it sprung to mind, but Rupert Murdoch.
Mm,
I, it could be argued that he's the most powerful man in the world, him or Vladimir Putin, who knows, one of the two of them. But,
I agree.
it's just this, this incredible power that he's wielded since, really since the 1980s. So over a couple of generations that he has been, the power broker in the United States, the United Kingdom, and his native Australia, and with an influence that goes far, far beyond by yeah. But I would
That's a
love to speak.
great. That is a
I'd love to speak to him,
great
not
idea.
just from that point of view, but as someone who has made his career in media, or what is left of it now. I just think that he would have some amazing wisdom to impart, and casting it aside from whatever his political beliefs might be, and whether or not I necessarily agree with those. His take on the real technique of apparently when he was raising his boy, well, all of his children, he'd have all of the newspapers laid out on the breakfast table and be saying to his 8, 10-year-old sons and daughters, why is that a great headline, and why is
Mm,
this a shit headline? I'm going to
mm.
fire this sub editor tomorrow. And what would be asking, really sort of instilling in them the those incredible skills of a newsman, of a newspaper man, which is I'm sure he learned from his father. But the fact that it's certainly not coming from nothing, as sort of your father's story, but people sort of forget that while Rupert Murdoch did grow up wealthy, and his father owned a newspaper. It was just one newspaper, and it was in Adelaide, which is a bit of a, secondary city. It's a bit like Tulsa, Oklahoma. So, what he sort of managed to spin out of that, I'd be interested to hear about that. But him, the Dalai Lama, I don't know,
Or let's get all three of them together: the Dalai Lama, Rupert Murdoch, and
Johann Rupert.
Johann Rupert. Well, I was going to say Putin, but all four of them. Okay. It sounds like a party. I had the pleasure in my youth of singing and performing for Rupert Murdoch's mother.
Okay.
And we were in the Yarra Valley.
Yeah.
And it was at a beautiful estate that specialized in Shiraz, the wine.
Yes, we do.
And she was a very lovely woman, and spoke to her for a while. And that is a great idea. I don't know. We'll try to make inroads, but it's a good call.
Look, you never know. But look, I'm curious, to ask more about your father, and going back to my story with my father and my dad. He came from very sort of humble background, and was a completely self-made man, and his sort of all of these trappings of classic sort of gentlemanhood are things that some people have drummed into them going back generations. It comes from their great grandfather to their grandfather to their blah 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 straight down the line, and might have been that was in my family for 300 years from whatever.
Yeah, right.
What of this sort of, you obviously have got a great love for the whole sort of sartorial world, and this whole sort of, the sort of Rake kind of gentlemanly world. What was that instilled in you by your father? Was this, certain pieces of advice that he gave you when you were younger, or, observing him taking pleasure in going and getting a suit from J Press or whatever it might have been? Is that something that was passed down?
I think it's a combination of nature and nurture. My mother, my father and mother met when they were grad students at Oxford together, and my mother's a pretty extraordinary woman. And when she was at Oxford, she entered some contest. I think that British Vogue had to you submit a column, and the winner gets their own column for a year, and she won it. And so all of a sudden, she's this American blonde at Oxford who has a column for British Vogue. That was a really big deal. And so when I was growing up, our house just had a bunch of magazines, always. And I just remember from a very, very, very young age, I would always just tear pages out of magazines and file them if I liked the imagery. When I was 5 years old, we lived in Japan for a year. And if I've been spoiled in just one way in my life, it's been through travel. I've been lucky to travel all over the world, 50 countries. And I remember even at a very young age, going into, the biggest well-lit duty-free shop or whatever in some sort of international terminal, and just looking at all of the perfume print ads and just fascinated by, I knew from a young age, this is just smelly water. This is an insane product. And yet, why did that company choose that model and that font and that lighting? And why the presentation was just, it was immediately a language I was always fluent in, visually. And so with clothes, again, I went to this high school starting when I was 14, where you just had to wear a jacket and tie. And I kind of discovered this magical, musty old wardrobe where I could pick out all these things and wear them. And so I always loved that. And what I've really been drawn to more than anything, what I thought the Rig did better than anything, is, storytelling, narrative. That the personal attachment, the narrative of the house or this brand fashion or whatever, I just thought all that was fascinating. And so, going back to my father was totally self-made. I think now I'm at a certain age where I can see him in his 20s and his 30s. Nobody told him this is the correct way to do it. honestly, my mother came from a very uh, established family. Her father was a congressman, her great grandfather, all of this. And so that was kind of the traditional line. My dad just, you fake it until you make it. And he just kind of like made it up. But he also, I don't know. So it's kind of both of these things. And of course, I grew up a little bit more conservative and traditional. And then I move out to LA where everybody's like, get a load of this guy. Well, look at
Yeah.
this young guy wearing a dinner jacket. Who do you think you are?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is, and then the last point that I'll make is, it takes a while to come into your own. Like I said, I'm 37 right now, and now I very much identify as a dad and just
Mm.
a working guy. And so it's like I like the things that I like. I always, if I had to describe my own style, I really appreciate discretion. I've never liked anything that insists upon itself. It says, here I am, and brand logo. Um, and then I like kind of the nuance of stuff. But yeah, I don't know. Did that answer any of what you were
Yeah,
asking?
look, no, kind of. I'm just, yeah, always interested in where these things kind of spring from. But yeah, and
How do you see
yeah,
how do you see kind of that world? I mean, I don't know if we have time to kind of go into this, but obviously there are major corrections that will happen in luxury retail, certainly
mm,
apparel. It's the demand, of course. I mean, right now, how much do we need? And then also the play of actual retail, of bricks and mortar. I'm 10 minutes away from Rodeo Drive here in Beverly
mm,
Hills, the epicenter of North American boutiques and whatnot. And it's sad, Christian. I mean, you know that half of these shops aren't going to survive, and those are the high end, high street shops.
mm, mm.
It's just crazy. I do you think that it's still too early to tell? Do you think that, hey, listen, in a year we'll kind of get back to normal? And I mean,
I think that's you'd be privy to some more informed conversations via your dad and his mates on what's more likely to happen. I did pretty well in economics in high school, but left that at the age of 18. So what I can say is that I'm hearing from, and a lot of these conversations such as this that I've been doing have been with people from the sort of tailoring / menswear world who were saying that definitely during this period. Well, number one, tailoring requires you to put yourself in the hands, literally in the hands of a tailor who will be measuring you, and so that's been impossible for a lot of them for quite some time. But I had Alan Flusser a week ago saying to me, that all of his clients, they're all staying at their houses in the Hamptons. They're all saying to him, man, I haven't worn a pair of trousers in 4 months. I've just been living in my shorts, in my tracksuit pants. So yeah, and he was kind of saying, and he's the god, he's the sage of this stuff. He was saying, the only continual trend that we've had in fashion, the one thing that has never stopped for the last 200 plus years, is things becoming more and more comfortable. And the more people get used to stuff that's super comfortable, the genie is out of the bottle, were his words, and you don't sort of go back. So I don't know, but I
I'd
think on the plus
add
side,
one more point to that. I think
yeah,
that's
yeah,
absolutely right. And the other thing, so yes, Flusser is great, and I've been a disciple of his for a long time. The other kind
they're
of,
going to cut us off in 1 minute, 60
oh,
seconds exactly. Sorry.
well, I was just going to say also sense of occasion.
Yeah,
So often we dress for the occasion, and the sense of occasion now is totally changing
yeah,
in all aspects of life. I know we have 45 seconds, so I'll let you take us out.
yeah. So there's
I
no
could go on
occasion, but
talking to
all
you
I
for
can
another
say
hour, by the way.
is I would love to, and we should continue this conversation. But when you're framed like this, having this jacket and this shirt and perhaps a
Right.
tie, it frames your face quite nicely. So I think that's something that we shouldn't throw away, even if you're wearing patch madras, Bermuda shorts underneath. But look, Miles, it's been a great pleasure speaking with you and speaking to you face to face for the first time. Yeah, I'd love to continue this conversation, but look, thank you so much for being so generous with your time today. All the best with the Coffee with the Greats podcast. I'll be keeping up with that. Thanks to everyone who joined us. Come back for the next episode of Banter with Barker. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Miles.
Hello.